All right. Do you guys have audio now? Hopefully so. I see green lights flashing across the screen. I didn't previously. All right, I'm back. Sorry. Listen, I will start by saying that my plan was to go live daily, do an NFL college football show, and I'm getting a little bit of hearing myself here, so I need to fix that. But the plan was to do that. And then TikTok Restream, which is the service I'm using, had other plans. After my first day, I came back, planned to get on here again immediately, and it did not work. For 7 days, TikTok put me in timeout, I guess, because there was no gaming on my stream. So I am a big gamer. I love College Football 26. I've had it since early release. So to appease everyone who may not be a fan of the Big Ten, I have Alabama and Florida State playing right here, College Football 26. This is streaming live on my Xbox, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. That game is at Doak Campbell Stadium here in just a few weeks during a loaded opening weekend for college football. The very first stream I did once I got back started after a summer away, I was streaming just about every single day during the winter and spring, was focused on SEC football. So we are going to talk about the Big Ten today because there were so many people that wanted to talk about the Big Ten the first day I was on here. So what I would ask is, look, if you love talking football, I hope that you will follow me. I hope that you'll share the stream. I hope you'll comment as we talk about the Big Ten today. I've already used all my good points, so they were all when the audio wasn't working, but we'll go back through it now. So I find it fascinating that Penn State is the number one pick, the team that's picked by the Big Ten media to win the Big Ten this year. You've got a team that obviously returns Drew Aller. You've got Nick Singleton back. Katron Allen, both of those guys are going to be a two-headed monster in the Big Ten this year and be really hard to stop, no doubt about it. But James Franklin has typically come up short in some coaching decisions at Penn State. Now he's got the front runner, the team that everyone's going to try to beat, which to me, even the polls don't reflect that. I mean, the coaches poll came out and Ohio State was number 2, Texas was number 1. So Penn State wasn't even the highest ranked team in the Big Ten and in the coaches poll. So I want to get into Penn State a lot more today just to see what everybody thinks about the Nittany Lions. But I have a lot of question marks. James Franklin obviously has just leaves a lot to be desired in the big games. He beats everybody else, but he has not been able to win the really big games consistently. Had Oregon on the ropes in the Big Ten championship game last year, came up short. Should have probably beaten Notre Dame in the playoff, came up short. So there were a lot of chances for Penn State to really do something. Nat, I see. I don't know if you're still in here, but the worst NFL GM. If you're getting at Jerry Jones, then I understand the joke. I kind of talked about a few of these other teams. Obviously, Ohio State and Oregon are going to be, two of the best 10 teams in the country. You throw Penn State in, you've got 3 of the top 10 for sure. If you said, I'll give you one of those 3 to win the Big Ten, I would take it. I think everybody would at this point. As you can see, Alabama just took the lead on Florida State in the stream we're doing here. So Illinois and Indiana are probably in that next bunch. I don't think Indiana got a lot of love last year. They made the college football playoff, obviously played a pretty soft schedule. This year they go to Oregon and to Penn State, so it will be interesting to see how the Hoosiers handle that. I think the rest of the schedule sets up nicely. They don't play a really tough out-of-conference schedule. Again, they play Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State. I mean, they should be 3-0 when they play Illinois on September 20th. You would think the winner of the Indiana-Illinois game, and I can't believe we're talking about Indiana and Illinois on a national stage at this point, but the winner of that game will probably set up nicely to try to break into the upper echelon of those top 3 in the Big Ten, which will be which will be interesting. Michigan, obviously, in between those two in the rankings here from the Big Ten media. Lots of questions there. We'll see if Bryce Underwood ends up getting the starting job there. They play Oklahoma week 2. That was a game that we talked about a lot when I did my opening stream after the long summer getaway last week, where you would think that the winner of Oklahoma and Michigan is set up to have a pretty good season. Obviously, both playing in pretty tough conferences. They have very difficult schedules. We'll find out who is for real when those two play each other in week 2 this year. Iowa, Nebraska. I mean, one of these days, Nebraska is going to get back onto the national stage. You would think with Dylan Raiola at quarterback, that could happen now, at least sooner than later. There are a lot of people who think Nebraska is going to have a really good year. They went 7-6 last year, which was a step forward. Can they get to 8 wins? Can they get to 9 wins? And then you got to wonder when USC is finally going to have its moment in this conference where it's going to get itself back up into the top 3 or 4. It's hard to believe that you're looking at 18 teams on the screen and USC is 9th on this list. That's how strong the Big Ten is. Obviously, a 7-win season last year for the Trojans as well. And then Washington, by the way, is 10th in the preseason media poll and was in the national championship game 2 years ago. It's just, it's a tough conference, just like the SEC. Obviously, the Big Ten has got bragging rights right now, winning the last 2 national championships with Ohio State going on that run last year. So we'll see. So my question is about James Franklin is, obviously this is a guy who over and over for Penn State has the Nittany Lions ranked very highly. But over and over and over, they end up losing the bigger games. Last year they lost by 3 to Notre Dame in the playoff. They lost to Ohio State by a touchdown. And then the Oregon loss in the Big Ten championship game. So they only had 3 losses last year. Obviously, to 3 of the best teams in the country. They beat every other team on their schedule. That is typically what we have come to expect from James Franklin. He's 101-42 at Penn State. If you look at his record overall, he's 15-29 against the AP Top 25. He's 1-15 against the top 5 all time, and he has a terrible record when it comes to playing Ohio State and Michigan. If you're going to win the Big Ten, you're going to have to beat those teams most years. Now, Penn State goes to Columbus to play Ohio State on November 1st this year. I want to make sure that my audio is working. I think it is. The other road games are UCLA, Michigan State, and Rutgers, so nothing too crazy. Now they host Oregon on September 27th. That will be a battle between 2 very, very highly ranked teams. You would not think that Oregon would have a loss by that game, although it's possible. They do play Oregon State. They have a road game at Northwestern. They also play Oklahoma State, who cannot be worse than last year. I mean, they absolutely cannot be. Oklahoma State, I thought, would be the biggest benefactor of, Oklahoma and Texas moving to the SEC, and instead they fell on their face. So we'll see if Oklahoma State can bounce back, but they do play Oregon in week 2. That's in September. Yeah, Andre, I agree. Look, Ohio State won the national championship last year, so Michigan won it the year before. I think the Big Ten is definitely got some bragging rights right now. I know there's a lot of people in SEC country where I live who think that the SEC is going to get those bragging rights back very, very quickly. But I guess we will see. Those teams are tough, especially Ohio State. Absolutely. Yeah, I guess we'll see. We'll see how they handle the quarterback change this year. If Sayin is going to be the quarterback, or if they go with one of the other options there in Columbus. So, I don't know. I think Ohio State should still be the team to beat. I think it's a little bit disrespectful at this point to put Penn State as the favorite. I understand with what they have coming back why people are all about Penn State this year, but I'm not sure that I would go with the Nittany Lions. I'm going to get that graphic off the screen of my stream real quick, so give me just a second. I'll be right back. All right. Apparently my controller had disconnected. I don't know why, but here I am. I'm back. So, if you look at Penn State's schedule, because I want to talk about the favorites in the Big Ten. Obviously, no disrespect to Nevada, Florida International, or Villanova, but those are teams that Penn State should be able to handle. And then they've got 2 weeks off before they host Oregon. I think that's huge, especially when you consider that Oregon will be playing Oregon State. That's a big rivalry game that I'm glad that they continued from the Pac-12. Now that the Pac-12 is kind of falling apart, I know it's coming back, hopefully, with Boise State and some others leading the charge. But Oregon and Oregon State don't have to play each other anymore. I'm glad that they are still playing each other. I think that that's good for college football. We will see how Oregon handles that stretch where they go to Northwestern, then they host Oregon State, and then they have to go to Happy Valley to play Penn State. You would have to think that Penn State would have the advantage there, especially with the more experienced quarterback, the game being at home, the bye week to prepare. You would have to think that Penn State would be in pretty good shape to beat Oregon. And then if you're looking at, going forward, they have to go all the way to the West Coast to play UCLA. That is a tricky game against the Bruins team that may be better. We talked a lot about this guy during the offseason, but now that Nico Iamaleava is the quarterback for UCLA, you never know what's going to happen with the Bruins. Maybe they do have a breakout season. This is a team that only won 5 games last year, but they don't have a tough schedule coming into that game against Penn State. They play Utah, UNLV, which, listen, I have a lot of thoughts on UNLV, so maybe I won't say that one's not tough. Dan Mullen is the head coach. I could see that one being a trap game. But then New Mexico and at Northwestern. There are no top 25 teams, more than likely, in that first 4 before they host Penn State. So I think that could definitely be a tricky game for Penn State. Then they play Northwestern and Iowa. Those are teams. Iowa, you never know. Can they score enough? The game is at Iowa, so I guess you could see. But again, look at the bye week and where it is focused for Penn State. So they have a bye before Oregon, and then they have a bye before Ohio State. Then obviously they play Indiana. It will be interesting to see if Indiana can keep the momentum up after last season. Now that they are no longer the team that is kind of the feel-good story that, didn't play a tough schedule, beat the teams that a good team would beat, didn't really play anybody really, really good until they played Ohio State last year. It'll be interesting to see how Indiana handles kind of being the hunted a little bit in the Big Ten. Richie says Penn State's going to win it all. I guess we'll see. I don't know. I would not pick Penn State to win the whole thing. If you're talking about the national championship, I would not. If you're talking about the Big Ten, I can see it with the way the schedule lays out, which is why I wanted to put it on the screen. I do think Nebraska could be a tricky game for Penn State in November, especially if you consider that there will likely be college football playoff implications for the Nittany Lions and potentially Big Ten championship implications as well. So, they play 2 of their last 3 on the road. They play 3 of their last 6 on the road, 4 of their last 7 on the road. If you look, once they get to October, they play 5 of 8 games on the road. So they're going to be traveling quite a bit. Obviously, 1 all the way on the West Coast, then Rutgers, up in New York, Penn State, Michigan State, or Ohio State, Michigan State, not too bad. Iowa, not too bad of travel there. Ohio State, I've got their schedule here too. Texas is obviously, it's hard to even, I'm a Nebraska fan. We've already written Penn State in as a loss. Mason, there's a long time before that game. There's a long time. 4-3 into the second bye. Wow. Mark says that Penn State's going 8-4. Coach, listen, screenshot that if it happens. You're going to look like the smartest man in America. I don't know that anybody's going to go there. I don't know if they'll lose 4. Jake, I'm going to get into the ACC on another day. I do really think Georgia Tech could surprise some people this year. That is a conference that, to me, feels wide open. I know Clemson is clearly the favorite, but Haynes King being back at quarterback, They obviously should have beaten Georgia last year. To me, that game went, like 6 overtimes? You probably remember it better than me. I just remember telling my wife, hey, as soon as the game's over, I'm going to sleep. And her waking up 2 hours later and being like, what in the world are you doing? The game's not over. They're still playing overtime. So Haynes King, I think, being back for the Yellow Jackets will go a long way in a wide open. How do you think Purdue should rebuild? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's hard to win at a place like Purdue. I really do. They always seem to have those years where, like they beat the brakes off of Ohio State. I'm going to show my age. Feels like it was 4 or 5 years ago when Ohio State was highly ranked. But they don't typically have the elite talent. They don't have the Ohio State, the Oregon type talent. So I don't know. I think it's really hard to win the Big Ten, especially an 18-team Big Ten if you're Purdue. So looking at Ohio State, though, look, I know it's really hard to get past that first one, right? It's really hard to say, okay, we need to look through the rest of the schedule and skip over Texas. That's the number 1 team in the country. It's the first time we've ever had number 1 versus number 2 to open a college football season. And I got to tell you, I think Ohio State should be favored to win that game. You've got the defending national champions, and I know Will Howard isn't there, and things look a lot different for the Buckeyes than they did a year ago. But Jeremiah Smith is back. Texas has not really accomplished winning anything of substance for a long time. And while that doesn't really factor in to this particular season, I think it's disrespectful not to expect Ohio State to win that game. I would pick the Buckeyes right now. I live in SEC country. I might hear about that, but I would pick Ohio State to beat Texas. We don't know enough about Arch Manning. I know the hype is there. I know he's got to be good. We've seen him a little bit. I do think that Steve Spurrier questioning why he wasn't the starter over Quinn Ewers last year, if he's as good as people say he is hilarious. He's got the Manning pedigree. There's a lot of spotlight on that kid, but there always has been. So we'll see. We'll see if he's the real deal when he plays Ohio State in the opener. But regardless of that game, if you can skip through it, act like it doesn't exist, get to the rest of the schedule, Grambling, Ohio, those are games that obviously you would expect Ohio State to win. Washington and Minnesota, anytime you're going all the way to Washington, you never know. That's a lot of travel. Very proud, but they obviously have a big bounce back to be a contender in the Big Ten this year after a pretty rough 2024 season that I think we all saw coming with as many people as they lost, including their head coach. So Minnesota, look, you don't want to just write these games off as wins. I think that's what we love about college football is you never really know. Never know where the upset's going to come, and anytime you just start writing W on a team's schedule, that's typically what happens. Jake, I'll do that here in just a second. I think, if you're looking at Illinois, that's a scary game. It's a scary game, but you would think that there's a specific way that Illinois is going to win that game. I know Luke Altmaier is back. I know with Brett Bielema being the head coach that they're going to want to run the football a lot. You don't want to get behind if you're Illinois typically in those kind of games. Usually the team with the better athletes ends up winning. Same thing with Wisconsin the next week. But I do think it's interesting if you look at this schedule. You've got Illinois and Wisconsin back-to-back on the road. They do get a bye, but then they play Penn State in Columbus. So, you do have that week off before you play Penn State, the favorite in the Big Ten according to the Big Ten media. But you do have those back-to-back road games at teams that can probably beat you if you play bad enough. I think Wisconsin has fallen off. They're not the team that they were a few years ago. But I think if you're playing at Camp Randall, if you don't show up prepared, you could definitely be in trouble. It doesn't matter what year it is. Wisconsin, I think, was picked toward the bottom half of the Big Ten. 12th by the Big Ten media. So that's fascinating to me. It's been a long time since we've seen that. Then you have the road trip to Purdue. UCLA at home, Rutgers at home. Who knows what we're going to get from UCLA? Who knows what Rutgers is going to look like in November? We're talking about the week of Thanksgiving here. And then the trip to Ann Arbor where, I don't know. There's usually a Michigan fan somewhere around that can tell you exactly how many days it's been since Michigan beat Ohio State. It's been years now. The one last year was absolutely stunning. When you talk about a Michigan team that I don't think Michigan could score on offense against air during practice, and then they go out and they beat Ohio State and Alabama to end the regular season in their bowl game. And I didn't think either one of those were going to happen. I didn't give Michigan a chance to beat Ohio State. I didn't give Michigan a chance to beat Alabama. I think that was the Capital One Bowl last year. But in Ann Arbor, you've got a whole year where you would think Bryce Underwood is eventually going to become the guy for Michigan. Look, I don't know what Michigan's going to look like in August, in September. I really don't. I think there's a lot of work to be done for the Wolverines this year. But I do know this. They're going to be a much more polished team November 29th, which is why rivalry weekend is so much fun in college football. We just don't get that out of other sports the way that we do college football, and it's so much fun to think about Ohio State having to win in Ann Arbor this year after Michigan went to Columbus and won last year and shocked them. And then all Ohio State did was go on and win the national championship when everybody had kind of wrote them off at that point. Then they beat Tennessee really badly, and the rest was history. They beat Oregon like a drum, and there they went. So I will say I kind of skipped over it. November 15th, we get Nico Iamaleava against Ohio State. You got to wonder if he's still having nightmares after the Tennessee-Ohio State playoff game. I don't have a specific slide with Michigan's schedule today, but I will just kind of run through it real quick. They've got New Mexico in the opener, and then at Oklahoma. We've talked about that one ad nauseum at this point. I mentioned it last week when we went through the SEC. I think one of those teams, whoever wins, is going to be probably ranked in the top 15, top 20 at that point, and will be seen as a threat. Both of those teams every year expect to be in the college football playoff. We're talking about Michigan picked, fifth in the Big Ten. We're talking about Oklahoma not picked in the top 5 of the SEC. That is strange. I know Oklahoma just changed conferences, but when was the last time Oklahoma wasn't seen as a threat to win a conference? And I'm not saying that they were last year, first year in the SEC, but usually they're the favorites or right there in the top 2 in the Big 12, and Michigan always is expected to be a threat in the Big 10. So one of those teams I think will be seen as a big threat at that point. We'll see which one. Obviously, with the game being in Norman, I would favor Oklahoma at this point. John Mateer, I think, is more of a known commodity at quarterback than Underwood is. If you keep going through, though, Central Michigan, and then it was just mentioned in the chat, Michigan goes to Nebraska on September 20th. I think that's a huge game, absolutely. I think that's a huge game. I think it'll be interesting for both programs. You've got Raiola at quarterback for Nebraska. You've got a huge game for Nebraska. They love huge games in Lincoln, Nebraska. They haven't had that many of them lately. The Colorado game felt big last year, but really wasn't as big as we thought it might be. Nebraska fell off. Colorado wasn't. They were good, but not really a national threat. Nebraska coming into that game as Cincinnati, which is a losable game, then Akron and Houston Christian. So you would think both of those teams could be undefeated. We'll see how Michigan does in Norman. After the Nebraska game, so Michigan's got 2 of their first 4 on the road. Going to Oklahoma and Nebraska is not an easy way to begin the season by September 20th. They have 2 weeks off before they host Wisconsin. Then they have to go to USC. They host Washington. They go to Michigan State, so they're going to Sparty to play a pretty big rivalry game there in state. Then they host Purdue. The Northwestern game is a neutral site game, I do believe. Yes, it's in Chicago. And then you have at Maryland and hosting Ohio State. So if you can kind of envision getting through the USC game, which I think is a challenging one. That was a really fun game last year between two programs trying to find themselves, which is weird to say about a Michigan team coming off the national championship, but Michigan never really figured it out last year. Those are the first 6. The last 6 feel a lot more manageable, right? I mean, Washington, Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, at Maryland, and then Ohio State at home. So if Michigan can get off to 4-2, they get off to 4-2. Maybe they can get to a 10-2 playoff spot, maybe even 9-3, depending on how everything falls on their schedule. So I'm not calling that. I'm not saying that's what Michigan's going to do, but you can see the path to possibly get there. So thoughts on Maryland? Jake's asking about a lot of random teams. So that's kind of how I feel about the Wolverines at this point. For anybody who's just joining, my goal is to have a daily NFL college football type show. I did that during college basketball last season. I do bracketology for college basketball, and it's a lot of fun. Did that on TikTok. Kind of started getting a little bit of a following and having some fun on TikTok that way. Started with college football with my kids about to go back to school. And did a show last week on the SEC. Immediately, TikTok kind of put me in jail for 7 days for not having any kind of gaming. I am a big gamer, so I've added a stream of College Football 26. We're going to see how these play out compared to real life. We have Alabama and Florida State playing at the bottom of each slide. That is playing live right now on my Xbox. Alabama's up 17-0 at Doak Campbell. I think there are probably a lot of Alabama and Florida State fans who would say this is exactly how you would expect this game to go. Looks like it's about to be 24-0 tied in the second quarter with a lot of time left. I did 15-minute quarters. I kind of played around with this the other day and did 8-minute quarters, and it was like a 7-3 game on the one I simulated. So, of course, this one's going to be like 900-0. But I'd appreciate any follows, any comments. We're working through technical difficulties here at times as I kind of get this going. I have a brand new microphone, brand new webcam, lots of different new stuff that we're kind of working out. Got some of those kinks worked out last week. Got in to do the second show and had my streaming access revoked for a week. Hit reapply right at the second TikTok allowed me to 45 minutes ago. Immediately approved me and jumped right back on here. So here we are. So I definitely appreciate anyone who is hanging out as we talk about the Big Ten today. So Oregon is the other team that is kind of mentioned among the favorites for good reason. They were the best team in college football all of last season before they lost to Ohio State in the playoff. You could make the argument that Oregon was the second best team in college football last year and ran into Ohio State at the exact wrong moment after beating Ohio State in the regular season. They ran into this juggernaut during the playoff in the quarterfinals and lost. If the seeding was set up differently, which has been a huge topic of discussion, then, hey, maybe they end up playing Ohio State in a semifinal or in the national championship game. The question, obviously, is all over the offense for this team, I would say, especially at quarterback. We'll see if Dante Moore is ready to take over the reins. He was the starting quarterback at UCLA previously. Obviously, he's taking over for Dylan Gabriel, who had a tremendous college career between his time at Oregon and at Oklahoma. So we will see. We will see what happens. He redshirted last year, and I think he's going to be among the top quarterbacks in the Big Ten this year for sure. I know that there are a lot of people on the Dante Moore train. Oregon plays, we talked about their schedule a little bit. They open with Montana State. I don't think I have a slide ready with their schedule on it, but they open with Montana State, Oklahoma State, at Northwestern. It is hard to beat a team twice. There's no doubt about that, especially a team as talented as Ohio State. So it's hard to criticize Oregon too much for that, especially the way they won the first time, right? I'm not I don't want to get back into the 12 man on the field debate with Oregon, and I know that rule has been changed to stop what they did last season to beat Ohio State, but maybe it was a little bit of karma for the Ducks after what happened in the regular season game last year in Eugene. But they open with Montana State, Oklahoma State. Again, I am hoping that Oklahoma State is a lot better this year because, my goodness, were they terrible last year. They go to Northwestern, and then they have Oregon State, the in-state rival in Eugene on September 20th. So 3 of the first 4 at home. They go to Penn State on September 27th. Note, like we mentioned earlier, Penn State has a bye week before that game where Oregon does not, which seems very, very important, especially considering Oregon is coming off a rivalry game that had to be scheduled in week 4 because the Pac-12 no longer exists. The Pac-12 exists, but doesn't exist in the same way it did, I guess I should say. The Pac-12 is making a comeback. Then they have 2 weeks off before they play Indiana. I think we all have a lot of questions about Indiana this year, so we'll see if they're the same team they were last year. Obviously, really good against the non-Oregon type teams last year. Then they go to Rutgers. They play Wisconsin, at Iowa, Minnesota, USC, and at Washington. So again, you can kind of see where if they can get through the Penn State game, if Oregon can get through Penn State, which is in week 5, they have a bye week. Then they play Indiana, and I'm not calling the Hoosiers a pushover. But then they go to Rutgers, Wisconsin, who, again, is picked in the bottom half of the Big Ten this year, at Iowa, Minnesota, USC, and at Washington. I would guess that one of those 6 teams is much better than what we expect. And I'm saying Rutgers, Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, USC, Washington. I like my odds of one of those teams actually being better than what we expect. But you've got to like Oregon's chances of winning those final 6, right? You got to like those final 6. If Oregon can get there, they're going to be in pretty good shape to run the table from that point forward, which I think is why Oregon is picked by so many people to make the college football playoff again this year. I'm reading all the comments here. Penn State's going to win, Nathan says. Look, I think with the bye week and the talent Penn State has coming back, I would favor Penn State right now in that game for sure. We'll see if James Franklin can beat a top-ranked team, which has been his struggle since he's become the Penn State head coach. Not saying they'll lose, but Indiana and Iowa could shock Oregon. Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I don't think you can count any win at Iowa easily. It just maybe end up being a super low-scoring game. We'll see. I mean, I think you got to be careful, especially when you're going on the road in the Big Ten. So who knows? FSU over Bama. Indy says, listen, the live stream I have going of that game differs very strongly with you. It's 27-0 Alabama right now, which is fascinating to me. I really thought I think the game will probably be closer than that. I want to get into the ACC maybe tomorrow. That conference feels wide open behind Clemson. I mean, it feels wide open to me. Florida State coming off of a 2-win season, but with enough confidence for their quarterback to call out Alabama, which is just not something you expect from a team that won 2 games the previous year and has a top-ranked team coming in. But Alabama, I mean, I don't want to jump into the SEC too much. We've already talked about the SEC. I did that last week. Had a lot of people saying, hey, talk about the Big Ten. They've won the last 2 national championships. So that's what we're doing today. We're talking about the Big Ten. But I will say Alabama was number 8 in the coaches poll. We don't have the AP poll yet. But so I'm going to say something that probably sounds confusing. If you took the coaches poll and said, hey, this is probably what the AP poll is going to look like this year, because you'd assume that they're going to be pretty similar, then that would be the lowest Alabama has been ranked. I think it was since 2007 or 2008. I looked it up when the poll came out. So even last year, Alabama was ranked higher than that in the preseason poll with DeBoer taking over as the head coach. So we'll see. Ohio State runs it again. I don't know. I don't look. I have not made a national championship prediction yet. I will when we get closer to the season. I'll pick all these conferences. Right now, I'm just having fun learning about all these conferences a little bit more as we get closer to the season. I think someone had asked me to rank the major conferences earlier. I'm gonna get stuff thrown at me, I feel like, by all of Big Ten country. But if we're saying strength from top to bottom, I would put the SEC at number one. And I think the SEC probably has more national championship contenders year in and year out than any other conference. I know we're talking about right now. I think you could argue that the Big Ten has three. I think Texas and Georgia are definitely national championship contenders in the SEC. LSU, people are up and down. Some people are really high on LSU with Nussmeier. Others are a little bit lower. Tennessee obviously feels like it's going to take a little bit of a step back. But, Alabama's right there in the mix. They're a top 10 team. So I'd put the SEC at number one over the Big Ten. I would probably say the Big 12 is 3, and then I would put the ACC at 4. But if Florida State bounces back, I think Georgia Tech's going to be pretty good. That was mentioned a little bit earlier. Clemson has just not been able to beat top opponents in recent years. We'll see if this is different with some of the stars that they have coming back this year. So, yeah, I mean, look, when it's come down to the playoff the last couple years, the Big Ten is the conference that's gotten it done. But look, I live in SEC country. I cheer for an SEC team. So I think that there is definitely inherent bias for me here, but I just don't know that the rest of the country can quite understand what an SEC Saturday feels like. I am not an SEC homer. I don't cheer for SEC teams. I hope that they all lose other than my favorite team, which is Florida. I say that all the time. I could care less how the rest of the SEC does. The better they are, the harder it is for my team to recruit. I don't cheer for a conference. I cheer for a team. I know that is something that people say against the SEC. I do not fit that profile. But an SEC Saturday is just so different. If you live in another part of the country, go to a big game in the SEC. It's crazy. I want to go to Ohio State, Michigan. I want to go to Ohio State, Penn State. I've been to the Iron Bowl. I've been to huge games in the Swamp. I've been to big games at Jordan-Hare Stadium between top 10 teams. So I've kind of experienced that. I would love to see it from other conferences' perspectives as well. But I'm telling you, it's just crazy down here. If a Big Ten team is – so 402, the answer is I'm not cheering. I'm just enjoying it. The only teams I cheer for are the Florida Gators and the Dallas Cowboys. That's it. I don't cheer for other teams. It's not my style. I'm a fan of one college team. I'm a fan of one NFL team. I'm not a fan of a conference, and I don't cheer in other games. Now I might cheer for a player's story. I might cheer for a Cinderella type run or something like that, but I typically do not get involved in cheering for others. So, sorry, I'm answering messages here. So, I think I think that there is this thought that so many SEC fans cheer for the SEC, and it's true, and it frankly, it drives me insane, but not all of us are like that. So my dad's a Cowboys fan, but a Nebraska fan, and he hates the Gators. Well, listen, I think Nebraska's got plenty to brag about against the Gators, that's for sure, after the 90s. So unpopular opinion, but the Mountain West Conference football is very, very entertaining. I don't disagree with you, Coach. I think it's going to be crazy when this new Pac-12 gets going. Once we get to this new look Pac-12, which is maybe something we should talk about on one of these streams. I know it's not for this year, but the Mountain West is going to look a lot different. So kind of resetting here for a minute. And I want to get into a little bit of stuff with the NFL here in a second too. This is the Big Ten preseason poll. Penn State is the favorite in the Big Ten, which still just absolutely surprises me, given the struggles the Nittany Lions have had against other top teams. We've talked about that quite a bit on this stream. Then Ohio State and Oregon, I don't think there's any surprise there. As Alabama comes up with the sack, I keep watching this stream. I don't know if you guys are or not, between Alabama and Florida State. It's College Football 26. I have it streaming live on my Xbox right now. Where I'm going to do this with all the games. Madden comes out tomorrow. We'll see. Maybe I'll do Philly and Dallas, the NFL opener here soon, and we'll see how the Xbox stream does comparing to actual real life. Right now, if this is how it played out, Florida State would want to look away. All the Florida State fans would want nothing to do with this, but I think this is probably how they expect it to go. After going back to the Big Ten, Ohio State, Oregon, then you have Illinois, Michigan, Indiana. It feels like those three, again, one of them is probably going to at least jump into that top three at times this year. You think Indiana and Illinois play early on this year. Michigan goes to Oklahoma. We haven't talked about the next 3 or 4 very much, though. Iowa, Nebraska, USC, and Washington. I don't mean anything against the Hawkeyes when I say this, but if you told me you could pick any year for the next 5 years, if you said Iowa's going to finish 7th in the Big Ten, I would probably just say, okay, write it in. Probably, that's fine. That's probably about right. But the other 3 I think are interesting, and I'm going to read the comments here. The Big Ten picked Illinois to finish 4th in the media poll. This is On3's graphic that I'm using. On3, obviously a great resource for college football information, but this was the Big Ten media poll where Penn State was picked to win the conference. So Nebraska, USC, and Washington. If you look at those 3, they're scary. You know, you would think that one of those teams is probably going to make a leap up. All 3 of them are very capable. I would say definitely the first 2. If you look at Nebraska, and we haven't went through their schedule, they play Cincinnati in the opener. I think that's a scary game. Obviously. Then you play Akron and Houston Christian. Michigan. They host Michigan. Then they get 2 weeks off before they host Michigan State. So if you can get through the Cincinnati game, and then you have Michigan coming to Lincoln, Nebraska, where Matt Rule and the Cornhuskers have their quarterback. They have all of this momentum. You know, look, they're coming off a 3-win season in the Big Ten, but they have momentum, positive momentum, an upward trajectory for the first time it feels like in a long time. Absolutely, that could be a dangerous game for a Michigan team that never figured it out on offense last year. They never figured it out last year. Are they going to be ready to play their second big road game in 4 weeks? They go to Oklahoma 2 weeks before that. Then they have to go to Nebraska. I think Nebraska could win that game. It was mentioned in the comments earlier. I absolutely believe that they could win that game. Then, like I said, they have Michigan State after 2 weeks off. Then they have back-to-back road games at Maryland, at Minnesota. These are the kind of games that Nebraska has slipped up and lost year over year over year. Teams that they should be able to win against most years. That is, Nebraska just has not been able to get over the hump. Then they host Northwestern and USC again at home, and then they have UCLA and Penn State on the road, and then Iowa at home. So if you look, they have – so the opening game is in Kansas City, Missouri against Cincinnati. Then they play 4 home games in a row. So Nebraska will have not played a road game before October the 11th, okay? Then they kind of go through a weird schedule quirk. They play 2 on the road, 2 at home, 2 on the road. And then they finish with Iowa at home. And I think that game is on Black Friday. I think it's on a Friday, which has kind of been the case with some of those Big Ten games like that one on Black Friday. So you could definitely see Nebraska having a pretty good season. They're 7 wins last year. You know, if you said, okay, they're going to split Cincinnati and Michigan, I'll say they beat Michigan State. Maybe they split Maryland and Minnesota. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Beat Northwestern. You could see them getting to 7 or 8, I think. I think you could see them getting to 7 or 8. Wisconsin going all the way this year, trust. Oh, man, I haven't even gotten to Wisconsin. Yet. Thoughts on Minnesota? We'll get there, Will. I'll talk about them as well. Washington is the other team I mentioned, is kind of about that trio below Iowa. Nebraska, USC, Washington. I mentioned USC a little bit earlier. I'm going to go back to the Trojans in just a second. Washington, they kind of have the same quirk that Oregon has with playing a rival early in the year, one of those old Pac-12 rivalries that, Oregon has Oregon State. I think it's week 3 or week 4. Washington has Washington State in week 3. That is on the road. But outside of that, they play Colorado State to open at home. They play UC Davis at home. They do go to Pullman to play Washington State. Washington State lost their quarterback. John Mateer is now at Oklahoma. Then they host Ohio State. So we're going to know very early on if this Washington team that is still trying to rebound after all those losses, after making the national championship game, and Michael Penix isn't walking through that door for the Huskies. They found that out very quickly last year. Will Washington be able to bounce back and even challenge Ohio State? Will they give them any kind of challenge? That game is at home. So you would think that that's the kind of game that Ohio State would make sure that it's paying attention for. Then they go to Maryland. They host Rutgers. They go to Michigan. They host Illinois. They play at Wisconsin. So, if you get the Ohio State game and then they have, Maryland and Rutgers, we'll see. But Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin are 3 in a row right there. They do have a break between Illinois and Wisconsin. So we'll see. I mean, look, Washington was not good against really good teams last year. They lost to Rutgers last year. They got blown out by Iowa. Indiana beat them by a couple touchdowns. Oregon beat them like a drum last year. They also lost to Washington State. So, not the easiest schedule, but if they can get through the Washington State game, maybe they get to 3-0 when they play Ohio State. You would imagine that being a pretty big game nationally at that point if you're talking about Ohio State going on the road to Washington. We'll see if the Huskies can end up making any kind of dent into the Big Ten picture this year instead of just being a forgotten team as part of that conference like they were last year. And then USC, which I kind of skipped over purposely here. At some point, Lincoln Riley has got to win at USC again, right? User, I didn't pick this. The Big Ten media picked this, and that was the question that I asked as well. I would definitely put Ohio State as the favorite. But with what Penn State has returning, and their schedule sets up really nicely too. They get a bye before the Ohio State game and the Oregon game. So I can understand why it was picked this way. For anybody who's just jumping in, we've got College Football 26 at the bottom of the screen here. You've got Florida State playing Alabama just like they will in Week 1. It is 30-3. Florida State is losing badly in Doak Campbell. I'm not sure anybody is super surprised by that, but I thought it would be closer. All right, so USC. So last year they opened with LSU. And that felt like a big, big win for LSU when they got it. It ended up not being as big of a win because they beat a 7-win USC team. But you got to think that they're going to start off better this year. They play Missouri State and Georgia Southern at home. Then they go to Purdue, which is a game they should win. Then they play Michigan State at home. All right, so you get to September 27th. They go to Illinois. You would expect that USC would be 4-0 going into that game. They should be. If they're not, there's going to be a lot of questions for Lincoln Riley. This is a guy who was seen as one of the 3 or 4 best coaches in all of college football when he was at Oklahoma. They were giving out Heismans, it felt like, every other season to his quarterbacks. And here we are, where he just has not been able to get it done yet at USC. He's 26-14 at USC. 3 years in, he had the number 1 pick in Caleb Williams a couple years ago, and they underachieved, I would say. So I think it's time for Lincoln Riley to to really get something done. They haven't gotten to the college football playoff. I'm not saying that this roster is good enough to do that. But when he was hired away from Oklahoma, the idea was that Lincoln Riley was going to lead USC to the college football playoff. You don't go out. You're right. I did say it backwards, Grant. USC did beat LSU, which felt like a big win. If you had told me after that they ended up with a 7-win season, I would have said, "What in the world? There's no way. There's no way." So, but we'll see if Lincoln Riley is able to get USC over the hump this year after a couple of disappointing years, and I think the pressure's really got to ramp up if they don't sniff the top half of this conference, at least the top 5 or 6 slots. It's time for USC to make that jump again and to get back into the national picture. They do play Michigan after that Illinois game I mentioned, but they have 2 weeks off. USC and Michigan was a tremendous game last year, back and forth. It was on CBS. I remember watching it. Michigan ended up winning that game, upsetting USC. At Notre Dame, October 18th, obviously the Irish are one of the national favorites. That will be a big, big game, having to go to South Bend, a big rivalry game. November 1st, they play at Nebraska, so they kind of have back-to-back road games there, but there's a bye week in between. And then they finish with Northwestern and Iowa, both in L.A. Then they go to Oregon, November 22nd, and then they host UCLA. So, look, it's not an easy schedule. Nobody would say that. I think the first 4 are very winnable. They need to win them. Then they have to figure out how to win some of these games between at Illinois, at Notre Dame, at Nebraska, at Oregon. Can you beat Oregon or Notre Dame if you're USC? Can you pull that off and get into the discussion? We'll see. We'll see what Lincoln Riley's got this year for the Trojans. And then I said I would talk about Wisconsin. Obviously, playing in Tuscaloosa, we're going to learn a lot about Wisconsin then. I watched that game last year when Tyler Van Dyke got hurt last year. They didn't even have a chance. I mean, he got hurt on the opening drive in Camp Randall against Alabama, and things went south very quick. It was 42-10. I think this is a program that's got a long ways to go. I think it's got a long ways to go after being a team that would have been in the college football playoff discussion most years. Now they're picked in the bottom half of a loaded conference. They play Miami, Ohio, then Middle Tennessee before they go to Tuscaloosa. Then they play Maryland. They've got 2 weeks off before they go to Ann Arbor to play Michigan. They host Iowa and Ohio State back-to-back, and then at Oregon. So they have 3 of 4 games in October are Michigan, Ohio State, and Oregon. The one that's not those 3 is Iowa. That's not a slouch either. So I've seen people say that nobody has a tougher October than Wisconsin. I would say that that's true. Definitely hosting Ohio State and then going to Oregon to end the month. I mean, that feels impossible. They they host Washington 2 weeks after the Oregon game. Then they play at Indiana. They host Illinois, and they play at Minnesota. So their road games, they play at Alabama, they play at Michigan, they play at Oregon, they play at Indiana, and then they end with at Minnesota, which will feel like a vacation compared to those other road games that are on their schedule. So, look, you tell me, are they winning any of those road games other than maybe Minnesota? Probably not. Obviously, this is a program that can always pull an upset. They're better at Camp Randall. Maybe they go in and keep the game close against Ohio State for a while in October, but probably going to be a long year for the Badgers. Probably going to be a long year. Michigan loses in Lincoln, that's what Paul says. Oh, gosh. Washington going to shock some people. Washington's underrated. LSU to win it all, NP says. Yeah, look, I don't know about LSU winning it all. I really don't. We talked about the SEC last week, so I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't know that I'm on the LSU bandwagon that some people are, but I do think LSU is going to be really, really, really good this year. We'll see how they play against Florida. That's going to be a huge game for both of those teams early on in the year. I think we've got less than 40 days until Florida goes to Baton Rouge. which will be a gigantic test for both of those teams early on this year. So, as far as ACC games are concerned, so we'll see. I don't think I don't have the confidence of picking LSU to win the title. I definitely do not, but I know that there are a lot of people who think they have the number one pick on their roster. Obviously playing Clemson to open too. I mean, they've got about as tough of an opening stretch as any team in the country. So if they get there, if they get to the national championship, they'll have earned it. That's for sure. All right, so anybody who is kind of jumped in here, I've kind of given my spill a couple times, but I'll do it one more time. In the fall, winter, spring, I was going live regularly talking college basketball and bracketology and having a lot of fun. I do bracketology every year for college basketball. Decided to bring it to TikTok this year and took the summer off, not really because I wanted to, but have had my kids at home and we've had a lot of fun, but it's kind of hard to do this when the kids are at home. But it is finally August, and it's back to school season. College football and the NFL are about to get started, so wanted to get back going. Started last week, kind of focused on the SEC, and immediately got hit with a stoppage from TikTok for not having any kind of gaming on here. So I love to play sports video games, especially College Football 26. Madden early releases tomorrow, so I'm going to add that streaming element as well. That way we can stay on TikTok and Restream's good side here and hopefully keep this stream going daily, which is what my plan is. I definitely want to do some stuff during the NFL preseason. We've got 3 games tomorrow night. We're not that far from the opener between the Cowboys and the Eagles on Thursday night. Who knows if Michael Parsons is going to play in that game, but we'll see. So I'd appreciate any follows, any shares, as kind of get this thing back going. We had quite a few people in here the other day. I started today with the microphone not working and some other issues, and kind of lost some momentum early. So any shares, any follows, I appreciate those, and thank you as we kind of get this thing back going. But it's going to be a lot of football over the next few weeks here, so a few months, I should say. All right, so I've got myself twice on the screen right here. That's cool. I want to talk about Micah Parsons real quick. So I'm a Cowboys fan. I have never hidden that on this channel, and I wanted to give a little bit of an NFL element today. Look, I think that the situation keeps getting worse. I think it keeps getting worse in Dallas. Micah Parsons is one of the best 5 players in the NFL, in my estimation. When he is on the field, he is the kind of difference maker that can change things abruptly. He can make things very different in a hurry. Defenses have to know where he is. He can line up just about anywhere, although he has been primarily used as a pass rusher the last couple years. And when he's not on the field, the Dallas defense is not really good. It's not great when Micah's not out there. And you can understand why, because he is a disruptor. He gets to the quarterback so fast that it is hard to fathom how fast that guy can get back and hit a quarterback. So the fact that Jerry Jones has not been able to sign him to a new contract is it's frustrating. It's frustrating not only for fans of the team, but for just other people who know the NFL and watch and know how talented this guy is. I mean, we're talking about a once-in-a-generation type talent. Michael Parsons is not the kind of guy that you draft year in and year out. He's become, along with Dak Prescott, maybe even CeeDee Lamb, the face of the organization in Dallas. I think he's, like I said, the best player on the roster. I do understand Jerry Jones' sentiment where he's gone back and forth a couple times saying, hey, I signed Dak Prescott to the biggest contract in NFL history last year, and then he wasn't on the field for a lot of the season. That's true. That's true. Dak wasn't very good when he was on the field last year either. So, hopefully he'll bounce back this year. But I understand not wanting to sign a guy too early in the offseason. then they get hurt. I understand that. I get that argument. But we're basically there now. We're basically at the regular season. And honestly, I don't see, what are we talking about here for Jerry Jones? A few $1 million, maybe an extra year, I don't know. Maybe Micah wants to be a free agent earlier, and Jerry wants to sign a long-term contract. He did that with Tyron Smith. He signed him to like a 10-year contract years and years ago. So I don't understand what the holdup is. I really don't. I think that it behooves Jerry Jones and the Cowboys to get this done. I know that it's really hard to tie up all your money into three guys, and we're talking about Dak Prescott, we're talking about CeeDee Lamb, and we're talking about Micah Parsons. But you're talking about at least two players who are in the top 5 of their position in the NFL. Dak Prescott was the MVP runner-up 2 years ago. He's coming off a pretty bad year. But with George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, you would expect Dak to have a much better season this year, to bounce back. So that's a lot of money to tie up to three guys. But but he's on the roster. Jerry hasn't done anything to try to trade him, so you knew you had to sign him. You've had all summer to do these talks. And now you're in a situation where it has become a circus, as it often does in Dallas, where Jerry has again made the Cowboys the national conversation, where everybody is talking about it. Michael goes on social media and says he wants to be traded, that he no longer wants to be in Dallas. It's just never a good thing. You got a brand new head coach who is trying to get these guys ready, and there's this, huge elephant in the room. Come to Buffalo. Yeah, look, I don't think he's going to be traded, and that's kind of where I'm getting. I don't understand how you can trade a guy like Micah Parsons. He's young. He's in his prime. He is one of the best players in the league. He has been very durable. He did miss a few games last year. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just don't. I don't understand in what world, universe. It doesn't matter how many Marvel metaverses you want to throw out there. I just don't understand how anybody in this situation could ever end up trading a guy like Michael Parsons. You do everything you can as an organization to get a player like that. And look, I know Luka Doncic was traded from the Mavericks in the NBA, which is still mind-boggling. But that would be on that same level of dysfunction to trade a guy like Micah Parsons. And what would you have to get back? I mean, it would have to be, major difference maker and some picks. I mean, something that's going to immediately make you better. And I just don't understand how you get better if this guy isn't on your roster. So, you've got Dak Prescott in his 30s. CeeDee Lamb's not getting any younger. You've seen Zach Martin move on and retire. Tyron Smith obviously is gone. So some of these cornerstone pieces for the Cowboys that were there for so long and never quite were able to get over the hump have moved on in their careers or in their lives. And Dak is look, I'm not calling Dak Prescott old, but he's been in the league for a decade now. You're not going to trade away a guy that's going to take you away from any kind of Super Bowl window you have left. And I'm not sure what window the Cowboys have at this point. They were certainly much more in the conversation 2 or 3 years ago than they are now, I would say. But you're not going to do something that's going to waste away the prime years of your quarterback, of some of your star players. And that's what trading Micah Parsons would do. So he's going to the Packers. Hunter, I don't think so. I don't think he's going anywhere. And this is my question. So I know Eric said he's not getting traded. So I think Eric and I are on the same page about this. But Eric, Hunter, anybody else who wants to weigh in, whoever your favorite team is, what would you be comfortable in them giving up for a guy like Michael Parsons? Like, they're calling Jerry Jones. They've got him on the phone. What would you be comfortable with them saying? Because I would think there would have to be an enormous trade package. I mean, I understand that Micah can hold out. He's got the leverage, per se here. He could sit out the whole season if he wants to, I guess. And then be a very highly sought after free agent where he could go out and sign any contract he wants with any team, I guess. But the Cowboys could franchise tag him too. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, we're getting way down the mountain here, but if he sat out the whole year because he's disgruntled, the Cowboys probably aren't going to sign him to a franchise tag. But just thinking outside the box here, the Cowboys do have some control. So the team that's on the other side of the phone is going to have to give up something pretty significant to even start the conversations. And I don't think Jerry Jones is taking those calls. I don't think Stephen Jones is taking those calls. But if they were going to take those calls, I mean, what are we talking about? Are we talking about several, 2 or 3 first-round picks? I mean, are we talking about, I would think a Ricky Williams kind of trade plus maybe another star, and maybe I'm crazy. I mean, I'm a Cowboys fan, so maybe I'm just out there. But I would think that it would be, a Herschel Walker type trade. I'm not saying it's going to work out that way for the Cowboys, but some kind of very significant trade that would lead to many, many, many picks, a complete rebuild for the Cowboys. Not that I'm not going to say that they're rebuilding now, but would allow them to completely rebuild their roster with young guys, or a significant difference maker on a team. So Asher says FSU is winning this. Look, if you're talking about in real life, they have more of a chance in real life than they do in this stream right now. That's for sure. I have to say I'm kind of flabbergasted by the score because I thought it would be much closer, but anybody who is putting a few dollars on Florida State, Alabama, if you want to go off the unbiased Xbox, by the way, the comeback is starting now apparently. I don't know how many backups Alabama's got in this game, but there's your first touchdown for Florida State. There you go. Ain't no one going to drop 3 first-round picks. Well, Shane, that's my question though. Like, how many would you even accept if you're Jerry Jones? If you're going to even think about trading this guy, and again, I don't think that he's going to, but if you were going to think about trading Micah Parsons, how many picks would you even pick up the phone for? How many would you even be interested? How many would even start the conversation? That would be my question. And then, like I said, flipping it around, what would you be comfortable in your favorite team giving up? I think people might give up 3 first-round picks over several years. I really do. I mean, you've got a guy. Would you rather have an unknown first-round pick who might be a bust entirely or might be an average player, or would you rather have one of the best players in the NFL in their prime for the next few years, especially if you're a team that's a contender? I'd rather have Micah Parsons than 3 first-round picks. I would do it right now. And you've seen teams like the Rams. I mean, how many years did the Rams go without a first-round pick, but they were one of the best teams in the NFL? I mean, the Rams didn't draft in the first round for, 6 or 7 years? Hey, listen. There you go. Coach. But, Coach, how many picks would you be comfortable with the Panthers giving up to go get Micah Parsons? I mean, seriously. I mean, my guess is that you would be pretty comfortable with a handful of picks to get rid, to give to Dallas to go get a difference maker, a superstar, and Micah Parsons. That would be my guess. And I think I mean if I wasn't a Cowboys fan and we were trading for Micah, my team was trading for Micah, I would definitely be comfortable with several first-round picks. I'd be comfortable with giving away another player to strengthen the Cowboys roster, something they need, which right now they need a running back worse than anything. I don't think that running backs have much value in trade. I don't know. But I would definitely be okay with saying, okay, we'll give you a couple. But I think Dallas is in a unique situation where they have a disgruntled superstar who is not quiet. I mean, they were, years and years ago, there wasn't social media wasn't in front of everybody's face. You didn't have Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and, all of these things for these guys just to go on and comment and show their face and say they weren't happy and, kind of take things into their control. The only time we ever heard from these guys is if they showed up to camp or, the owner or the general manager or the coach would say something in a press conference. It was a much different world when we had contract negotiations 20 years ago. Even 30 years ago when Emmitt Smith was upset with Jerry Jones and sat out 2 games to begin the season. Very different world. And so Jerry's getting up in age. He's in his 80s. You just wonder if he even understands that. And look, I'm not trying to hate on Jerry Jones. He is obviously a premier businessman who has the Cowboys as the most valued franchise in all of American sports. He's a great NFL owner. If you're talking about I need a guy to run my sports franchise business, Jerry Jones should be near the top of your list. I don't know that you want him as your GM, but as the owner, he obviously does a good job and he always keeps the Cowboys in the news, and I think that helps the profits. I don't know that it helps the team in situations like this. I'll probably cry if that's the real score. No, listen, I would be stunned if this is the real score. And it's not that I don't think that Alabama's going to be a pretty good team this year. But, look, I'm going to use a common sense analogy here. It feels like Alabama is dropping back to the field a little bit, right? They're 8th in the coaches poll. They weren't as good last year. They lost to Vanderbilt. They lost to Oklahoma. They even lost to Michigan, who before the year that sounded good, but Michigan was not very good last year and couldn't move the football at all. So they lost to those 3 teams that you wouldn't expect. And then Florida State lost to everybody. I mean, Florida State won 2 games last year. They should burn all the tape from the history of the 2024 season in Tallahassee. Complete joke, disaster, should never happen. Mike Norvell probably shouldn't have a job at this point. I mean, it was that bad, and I understand they went undefeated in the regular season the year before, and that bought him some time, but it is insane how bad Florida State was last year. So you would expect that if Alabama keeps slightly falling back down to the pack and Florida State moves up a little bit with their new quarterback, Thomas Castellanos, who cannot be worse than DJU. In fact, I've said that I really like that kid and the way he plays football. Then you would think that the game will be closer, right? Yeah, Scam, it was awful. It was awful. I only live a few hours from Tallahassee, so FSU will hang in, yeah. Look, I don't think Florida State's going to win, but with the game being in Doak Campbell, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it helps when Castellanos wants to call out Alabama either. Why? I know that you beat Florida State last year when you were at Boston College and you have all this confidence, and I get that. I get it. He's a confident kid. He should be. He's a good player. But things didn't work out with Bill O'Brien at Boston College. And now you're going to come to Florida State that won 2 games last year, and I think it's a great opportunity. I understand why he's in Tallahassee. But why open your mouth? Why say what you said about Alabama? I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I really don't. Yeah, I think the new offense will definitely help Florida State because last year was just a complete disaster. So today we've kind of talked about the Big Ten a little bit. We're streaming Alabama and Florida State, which is way out of hand. Alabama just added another touchdown. Madden drops tomorrow. Well, at least the early release does, which I've got. So I'll probably have some Madden going tomorrow. Maybe we'll do the opener between the Cowboys and the Eagles. Maybe I'll have to take Micah Parsons off the field so that we can look and see what it's going to be like for the Cowboys if Micah's not out there. I don't know how many Alabama backups are playing in this game right now, but I do know this. Florida State did not move the ball at all before the fourth quarter. So, I don't know. I think Castellanos is going to do really well for them. I just wish that he had not said what he said about Alabama. I don't understand how adding any kind of bulletin board material for a team that's already fired up makes any sense. Now, I do think Gus Malzahn is better as an offensive coordinator than as a head coach, and agree with the commenter who said that that's going to make a big difference for the Noles this year because their offense was putrid. It was terrible. Coach, that's a good question. I don't think he's going anywhere. Do you think he's going anywhere? Do you think he's going to be traded? Because I don't think so. I mean, I don't. And do you want him? I mean, I know. Look, again, Coach, I'm a Cowboys fan, but I don't want people to forget that there's probably bias there. But do you want Terry McLaurin? I mean, I'm serious when I say that. I mean, how old is he now? Is he 30? Is he 31? Because typically this is the age where a guy who is his age starts slowing down just a little bit. So he's 29 years old, but he'll turn 30 in September. I just looked it up. Probably, but would you sign him long term? I mean, and I'm not trying to hate on Terry McLaurin. I think that he's been there through some tough years. Obviously, he's been nothing but a good pro for Washington. He caught 82 passes last year, but I don't know that his prospects of being a star player for the next, 3-4 years are high. I could see him falling off a cliff just a little bit. Just happened. Micah went to Detroit for a fifth and a Stell Whataburger. There you go. Listen, can you get a Whataburger that's not Stell these days? Did they make the burger Stell like extra Stell, or was that just a normal Whataburger that they just made and had ready? That's the question. That's what I'd want to know. I do think that it's interesting that you've got two players from the same division that have made these trade requests pretty close to one another. I just, I feel like Micah has so many good years ahead of him. I've seen people say that, Pittsburgh should go get, McLaurin. He actually, July 31st, I think, is when he actually asked for the trade. Pittsburgh traded George Pickens to Dallas. They could use a guy like McLaurin. You already have Aaron Rodgers, who you're probably, 1 year, right? That's kind of what we expect. 1 year from Aaron Rodgers. So if you get 1 year from Rodgers, then getting a guy who's about to turn 30 in September, not that big of a deal. I mean, I don't know, how long of a contract I'd want to sign him to, but you're talking about a 1 year rental at quarterback. I could understand why a team like the Steelers would go out and get him. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't disagree. I think that there's certainly going to be some teams that are interested. I've never been the biggest fan of McLaurin. And again, I am a Cowboys fan, but I've never watched Washington play and say, oh my gosh, man, we got to play that guy. I mean, he's had some decent games against the Cowboys, but not once have I ever said, okay. Now, Jaden Daniels for sure, I've just never looked at McLaurin as a top 10 receiver in the league. I just haven't, but I could understand why teams would go get him. Fun. I know people say that about paying Dak, but what else were the Cowboys going to do? I mean, you're coming off 3 12-win seasons in a row. I mean, I just think it's easy in hindsight because he played bad last year, because he didn't have a good season and then he got hurt. But what in the world were the Cowboys supposed to do? They'd won 36 games over the last 3 years. Dak played terrible in the playoff game against the Packers, but you're the number 2 seed in the NFC. Dak was number 2 in the MVP voting that year. I mean, what in the world were the Cowboys supposed to do with Dak Prescott? They had to pay him. Should they have paid him earlier? Probably. They probably should have already worked it out. They didn't work it out. Took longer than needed. And Dak ended up signing an even larger contract than what he probably would have otherwise. But I think they had to sign him. I mean, look, Coach, I think anytime you can add a star receiver with Josh Allen, I mean, At some point, Josh Allen, you watch him and you're like, man, this is a guy that puts so much on his body, running as much as he does. It is truly a testament to his training that he is able to stay healthy like he is. I think, Buffalo, sure. I mean, you're already talking about one of the best teams in the league. Then you add a guy like McLaurin. I don't know exactly what, Washington would look for in return. They've obviously got Deebo Samuel, who, is he going to be healthy? I mean, there's a lot of questions with Deebo for sure. So, but if you look up trade options for Terry, obviously there's a lot of rumors out there. There's a lot of rumors out there about where he might end up going. Again, I think Pittsburgh makes a lot of sense. I do think Buffalo could make some sense, like you said. I've seen people say that the Patriots could make some sense as well. Giving up Shakir, I would too. Mike is going to the Browns. Bradley, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. You've already paid Myles Garrett. I saw, there were people who said maybe the Chargers, but then they went and got Keenan Allen. Raiders, Cardinals. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I still think that Pittsburgh would make a lot of sense. I've seen people throw Calvin Austin out as a guy who could be traded to Washington. I've always been a fan of Calvin Austin. I think he's fast. He makes big plays. He just doesn't get the ball a lot. I'm not saying he's in Terry McLaurin's level or anywhere near it, but, still a guy that's developing. I wouldn't hate that if I'm Washington. Brandon, that's my opinion too, is that this is going to get done before the season. But isn't it crazy that we're here again with the Cowboys? I mean, I don't understand it. I wish that it could be avoided. Jerry coming out yesterday and saying that he's not sure that Micah will even play week 1. I haven't, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember Jerry using that kind of language when it comes to a star player. A few days ago he said fans should not lose sleep over the Micah Parsons situation. He said, fans, I wouldn't lose any sleep over this. And then he comes out and he says, that Micah may not play week 1. And you're playing the defending Super Bowl champs, who just happen to be really your biggest rival in the league, and you're playing at their place on Thursday night to open the entire season. So, I will say that when Jerry said, I wouldn't worry about this, we're not trading him, any concern I had went down. But then when he comes out and says, I don't know if he's going to play week 1. How would I know that? I don't like that. It would, if the language was different and Jerry said, look, we're going to get a deal done. We're going to figure this out. We're going to make sure that this guy is playing. That's my take on it is, if I'm Jerry Jones, if I say it that way, hey, from our part, we want him on the field week 1, and we're going to do everything we can to have him signed. Instead, Jerry is saying everything but that. He's putting all the onus on Micah. They haven't even talked. They haven't had a conversation since the trade request. I have no idea what's going on there. I don't understand it. I do know that Micah Parsons seems to really love playing football. And if he really loves football as much as I think he will, I think getting closer to the season, he'll come around. And that Jerry will come around and we'll get this done. It may take some veteran leadership. It could even take a guy like Dak stepping in and just, I don't know, waving the olive branch, I mean, I don't know. Something's got to be done in order to get that guy in the field if you're the Cowboys. Something has to be done. We've got 3 preseason games tomorrow night. in the NFL. Cowboys and Rams is Saturday. I will definitely be watching that one. I don't know if you guys read training camp reports like I do. I know Coach probably does. But the Cowboys apparently looked absolutely horrible yesterday in the joint practice. with the Rams. Still couldn't run the football. Tomorrow night, we've got Colts and Ravens. It sounds like Anthony Richardson is going to start at quarterback for the Colts in that game. You got Bengals and Eagles, and then Raiders and Seahawks. I don't think we're going to see Geno Smith in that game, but it is interesting that those two teams are playing in week 1. Then we've got 3 games Friday night, and everybody wants to watch the Browns play to see what happens with Shedeur Sanders. It sounds like he's going to be the starting quarterback. The other quarterbacks as well, see if Shedeur is going to make that team. I don't know who we're going to see out of the Panthers starters. I'm sure that, Coach, you probably have a better idea. I don't know that we're going to see Bryce Young, but it probably would do him well. I know he played well down the stretch last year, but man, it just feels like Bryce Young just needs as many snaps as he can get right now. I know you want to get to the season healthy, but all right, so that makes sense to me. I would play him. I would play him at least a series. Let's see. So, there's 3 Friday night. Obviously, Browns-Panthers will be the big one there. Commanders-Patriots. See if Drake may get some snaps Friday night. I would expect he would. I admit I have not read if he's going to, but I would think that he might get some snaps. Giants and Bills in the early game on Saturday. Texans and Vikings. Steelers, Jags, and you got Cowboys and Rams on Saturday night. That one's on. Is that one on? It's not on NFL Network. You got to stream it, I guess, in LA. I'll have some family coming in about that time, but I'll be watching. Titans and Bucks should be fun. Chiefs and Cardinals, Jets, Packers, Broncos, Niners, and then the Sunday games. You've got the Dolphins and Bears in the early game on Sunday. That's a national broadcast on NFL Network. Followed by the Saints and the Chargers. Chargers looked really good last week. Not that we can take a lot away from it. I'm not saying that, but they looked pretty good in spanking the Lions last week. So we'll see which who plays their starters. We'll see if maybe we can pick up some stuff for fantasy football. I'm probably going to try to go live tomorrow during the day, a little bit earlier during the day now that everything is back working again. We'll have a stream going with some Madden. And then we will potentially go live tomorrow night during these preseason games. I'm going to be watching all 3 of them. So certainly would hope that you guys might join as we watch that. I'll have some kind of stream going, and we'll probably have the scores on the screen if I go live tomorrow night. I know not everybody gets NFL Network, and not everybody will get those other 2 games. Bengals, Eagles, and Raiders, Seahawks are not. Or I guess Bengals, Eagles is the only one tomorrow night that is not nationally broadcast, meaning NFL Network being broadcast. But all 3 of those, it looks like they'll probably join Raiders and Seahawks whenever the Colts-Ravens game ends. So we'll see what Anthony Richardson looks like tomorrow night. All right, so for anybody who was sitting here wondering, you can write this one down. 61-17. Alabama 61, Florida State 17. There's your opener. I don't know what the spread is for that game. I'd imagine Alabama by a few touchdowns, maybe 3 touchdowns in the opener in Vegas. College Football 26 says it's going to be much different than that. Alabama by 44. Alabama's going to spank them according to College Football 26. So you guys can write that down and take it to the bank. We'll see what happens. But all right, guys, I will be on tomorrow. Maybe we'll talk about the ACC tomorrow. Maybe we'll jump into the ACC. Maybe we'll do an ACC Big 12 show so that we can hit both of the other major conferences and say that we've hit all 3 of them. And then we'll be live tomorrow night and watch some NFL preseason games and see how teams look. So I will see you guys then. I appreciate any follows, any shares. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you guys around.